One of the problems that we have on YouTube is that instead of discussing policy, we end up discussing ideology a lot. So instead of, for instance, talking about which guns should be for sale to private citizens, we end up talking about the abstract idea of gun control. And that seems really problematic to me when it comes to a big civilizational problem like climate change, because we can never get to the policy conversation as long as we're stuck in an ideological conversation. I really appreciated your robust defense of climate science in your speech, and your embrace of executive action. But in the end, I think the real work is probably going to have to be done with Congress. And so my question is both about YouTube, the discourse among individuals, but also discourse in Congress. How do we get past that ideological rigidity and that divisiveness to have a policy discussion about what's actually the most efficient way to reduce our carbon emissions?
Well, a couple of things that we've tried to do is, first of all, focus on things that, even if there wasn't climate change, we should want to do anyway, but has the added benefit of reducing carbon in the atmosphere. So, for example, when we worked with the automakers to, through voluntary action, implement a doubling of fuel efficiency standards on cars, that is going to have a huge impact on carbon in the atmosphere, but it's also good economics because it means that consumers are saving money at the pump. It means that U.S. automakers are competing with foreign automakers that previously had a corner on the small car market or the fuel-efficient car market. And so that's gotten us part of the way there. The next steps, though, are going to be more challenging. And some of this is ideological, some of it is economic, and it's not all partisan. I have to tell you that there are some Democrats, for example, who represent states or districts that are heavily reliant on old power plants and are more heavily manufacturing based. And the truth is that if you produce power using old power plants, you're going to be emitting more carbon, but to upgrade those plants means energy is going to be a little bit more expensive, at least on the front end. At the core, we have to do something that's really difficult for any society to do, and that is to take actions now where the benefits are going to be coming down the road, or at least we're going to be avoiding big problems down the road. And it's hard when people are thinking day to day about bread and butter issues. That's true in our own lives. It's true as a society in the whole. What I'm optimistic about is that we can continue to make progress without slowing economic growth. And the same steps that we took with respect to energy efficiency on cars, we can take on buildings, we can take on appliances. We can make sure that new power plants that are being built are more efficient than the old ones. And we can continue to put research and our support behind clean energy that is going to continue to help us transition away from dirtier fuels. And we've made progress, but I've got to tell you, John, I wish I could say that the way Washington works, that it's a rational, reasoned, policy wonk conversation where you would be very comfortable. That's not what motivates folks a lot of times around here. What motivates folks is getting reelected, and for a lot of members of Congress, what they're responding to is a public that is still not entirely convinced that this is an urgent problem. And part of my job, I think, is to use the bully pulpit to help raise people's awareness. Because if the public cares about it, eventually Congress acts. If the public doesn't care about it, it's very hard to get big stuff done because legislators respond to their constituents sooner or later.